Welcome back to BetRacingNation here on Sports Tonight Live. This is a Breeders' Cup special. And I would say, first of all, Dan, that I asked you the question of who was the best jockey, and I got the answer, the worst jockey. So let's just quickly ask you the best ones.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go along with Tom, really. Tom's quite clued up in the fact that John Velasquez is probably the best one out there for me at the moment.
Right, OK. Let's move on to a absolutely fascinating contest. This is 11:40, probably the best of American against the best of what we've got here in Great Britain. Olympic Glory takes on Wise Dan, the defending champion. Let's get your thoughts, first of all, on Wise Dan. These guys can talk about Olympic Glory. Wise Dan did not win last time. No,
defeated by Silver Max last time on the poly track. A disappointing performance. Trainers taking most of the blame, saying that he didn't put work into him since between the Woodbine Mile, which he won impressively, and this race that he's just come out of and not looked the same horse. For me, I'm disappointed by the level of Europeans that are going over. I'm not sure what the guys will come.
Well, because you think that they could win this race?
I think, yeah, if Toronado was there and fit, it's a shame that he's taken too long to come back from this wind-up that he's had.
Yeah.
Olympic Glory, for me, is not the one to be challenged.
What about something like Moonlight Cloud? Something like that could be interesting.
Yeah, Moonlight Cloud, I mean, I think they would have gone to Santa Anita if she didn't perform so poorly the year before. She would have been the right kind of horse for it. I think Wise Dan is beatable in this race.
Is the horse beatable by Olympic Glory? Bearing in mind the last time we saw the horse, it won at Ascot, Champions Day, soft going. It's not going to be anywhere near that come the weekend. Your views, guys, on Olympic Glory?
Well, yeah, I mean, he absolutely bolted up with blinkers on, didn't he, by, I think, 6
Yeah, will the blinkers work a second time is also the question as well.
I mean, you'd imagine so. Looks like they've got extra improvement out of him, and, you'd only imagine that to continue, really. But obviously, as I say, bolted up in the QE2, put 6 lengths behind himself, and horses like Dawn Approach, which is no mean feat. The thing is that was how long ago? What, 10, 11, 12 days ago?
Yeah.
For me,
19th of October.
Yeah,
so you look about
we're on there, 12 days.
2 week break.
12 days, yeah. So for me, it's almost like it's going to come a little bit quickly. I mean, myself and Dan were talking before the show about whether it can take a lot out of the horse for travelling, and arguably that can't. But still, 2 weeks isn't a great deal of time to get that horse prepared again for arguably the toughest race that it's going to experience, coming up against horses like Wise Dan. I think it's a little bit too much for Olympic Glory, this.
I would agree. I like a horse that's been laid out for a race like this. Not, this is almost an afterthought after Ascot. And I don't like that. I think 14 days is a very short space of time. I wouldn't be getting involved.
The one positive I would put up for Olympic Glory is the fact that he's been off for most of the season, came back quite late in the season. So whereby, with the likes of Dawn Approach was backing up quite quickly earlier on in the season. I wouldn't be worried about the time.
Horses like Alcazine, Dawn Approach, they've done quite a lot, haven't they, during the course of the season?
Yeah.
And at the back end, you've got a horse like this. Now, I just want to briefly touch on a horse called Obviously, who needs to lead.
Yeah.
Will it lead in this field?
He'll lead. Whether he goes off too quick is another matter, really. Loves the track. He started to disappoint me personally in the last couple of races. He looks like he'd be California's big hope in this race. And I think he's starting to take himself out of it in that he's going off too quickly and his jockey's not really got a say on the matter.
But Silver Max will keep him going at the front.
Yeah, Silver Max, potentially they're going to inconvenience each other. Now, personally, I want to be with one or the other in that race. Silver Max, his price has gone, to be honest. I was hoping to get 20 to 1 before,
Is that the one you fancy?
That was the one I fancy, is the one I still fancy.
Right, OK.
But the price isn't great now.
What are we talking now, price-wise?
We're talking about 6 to 1 by the time that it goes.
Yeah, I mean, the time of the recording, the best prices were around from a variety of firms are 7 to 1. And you was hoping for?
Well, before, if he didn't beat Wise Dan, it would have been 20s, and that would have been a great each.
So a clever, smart, professional gambler would have had it before he beat Wise Dan.
The problem is we don't get any markets now.
Yeah, but I mean, if you fancy it, you fancy it, don't you? I mean, I'm all ears to what you're saying about this American racing. If he's 6 or 7 to 1, that sounds good enough for me.
Yeah, that's true.
Any other thoughts?
I could touch on Cristoforo Colombo from the O'Brien yard. He's only ran over the mile once. And he was 8 lengths behind Dawn Approach that day in the Guineas, which we all know is a strong Guineas. Dawn Approach really, he was at his best that day, and it's good to see him come back to the mile now after several attempts over an island at 6 furlongs. That's always going to be too sharp for him. And again, it's just, why have they chucked him in here at a mile? Cristoforo Colombo, he hasn't really been that impressive, but for some reason he's popped up in the Breeders' Cup mile. I think he'll be better off back at that 8 furlongs, I say, and might be worth going each way if there's a big price on him.
How important is the jockeyship, Dan? Obviously, you've got Ryan Moore and Richard Hughes, world-class jockeys. They're going to America. How easy is it for them to just slot in, or is it difficult, especially on the dirt? They're not used to it.
I think
the
for
dirt.
Ryan, the real dirt.
Yeah.
Real dirt.
For Ryan, he's probably uniquely versatile in that he seems to take to anything. Obviously, first ride in Japan, he went and won on Snow Fairy. Richard Hughes, class jockey that he is, I'm concerned by some of the rides that he had last year, in that he managed to get Skylands and beat in this juvenile fillies turf. Now, Skylanton should have been winning that, went on to win our 1,000 guineas. Joseph O'Brien, notably, only one ride in the whole Breeders' Cup.
Yeah.
Ryan Moore takes what is the one that Joseph O'Brien rides then?
Joseph got Declaration of War in the
He's on Declaration of War, is he?
And on Declaration of War, we're going to come to that in a second, but your selection in the race that we've just previewed?
Yeah, poor price, but I'd have to stick with Silver Max.
Silver Max?
Just about a bit, maybe a touch on Cristoforo Colombo each way.
I tried to find something else, but I've got to stick with Wise Dan.
Yeah, I'll stick with Wise Dan as well, only because it's proven, and I think the fact that he's got beat, I think if he won the last race, he'd be maybe even slightly odds on.
You'd be looking at odds on, I think.
Okay, well, let's move on to the biggest race of the evening. In fact, it falls into our Sunday morning, 12:35, the Breeders' Cup Classic. Game on Dude. I think we'll touch on that one first, and I'll actually go to you, Billy.
Okay.
That surprised you there, didn't it?
Surprised there, yeah. I had a look. I mean, I think he's got the best chance of winning this race. The only thing in the back of the mind was he did run badly last year, I believe, at this meeting. And you don't really want that. You'd like a horse that's come here before, been to the experience. And
But he's got 1-1-1-1-1.
he has, yeah, he has. Bob Baffert, Mike Smith. To me, he's got a favourites chance in a difficult race. Moving on to
Tom. To me.
You can discuss the Raiders. There we go.
Yeah, okay. No, well,
You've got a Friday selection. We can always touch on that.
No, let's stick with this race. I won't pull out the obvious one straight away, Declaration of War. Maybe give a mention to Planteur, which is an interesting entry coming over from France, I believe. He was third in a Dubai World Cup a little way back, but the reason why I picked that piece of form out is because arguably that's the only race where we can really transfer the form across, considering the type of ground that he ran on. It was on the all-weather, and that might replicate what he's going to run on here in the Breeders' Cup Classic, if anything.
Now, looking at the breeding, and you've got Tom, you look at breeding, and Dan, obviously you're familiar with what happens in America. Declaration of War on breeding should do well here, but you have your reservations.
Yeah, should do well. My sources tell me that he went over as a 3-year-old from France when Ballydoyle bought him. Went to train with Todd Pledger. Didn't seem to like the kickback of the dirt. Never made a start on dirt. Came back to Aidan O'Brien in Ireland and then started to rebuild his career from there. Now, my concern would be if he doesn't like the kickback when he's free, he's going to have to have matured a lot to like the kickback when he comes into
the
this
horse has
big race.
improved. Well, like the others are sort of flattened off a little bit. Declaration's War on that sort of group of horses this season from going back from the summer. They're one of the Declaration of War is one of the horses that has improved and continued to improve, whereas horses like Alcazine...
Is it a 10-week break? Is it a 10-week break
Yeah.
to prepare him for this specifically? Is that why he's had a 10-week break rather than taking up one or two other targets that he could have taken?
But just talking about, obviously you were saying earlier on that you like a horse to be played out for their races. Obviously this has been the idea from potentially when he won the Jubbamont. Concerns that I don't know whether they had planned to skip the Champion Stakes, but they had to in the end because of the ground. I'm just worried that he was a classy 2-year-old, late season 2-year-old. For me, he hasn't progressed that much to suggest that. I don't think he's going to be a factor.
Okay,
I disagree there with a couple of things. If I could bring them up. No, and it would just be, you know, they say they pulled him out of the Champion Stakes because of the ground. Well, looking for it, he's won on heavy ground, he's won on soft ground, he's won on good ground, he's won on good to firm ground, and he's won on standard ground.
But can he win on real dirt?
But if anyone can get a coup, it's definitely Aidan O'Brien. I want to talk about a couple of others because we need to wrap up quite soon. And second in this last year, and I saw the little clip that you sent that horse is actually dancing along to his own tune, is Mucho Macho Man, who was second last year. Chances this year?
A better chance than last year for me. He was impressive in his prep race, and I like the way that they've brought the horse over to California to have his prep. Could have gone to New York or stayed in New York. Doesn't seem to enjoy New York as much as when he's over here. California looks great for him. Second last year. He's a big chance for me.
Okay, and should we talk about Faultland? Because obviously...
Yeah, defending champion. Unseated his rider in his first race this season. The American experts tell you that he ran great speed figures without the jockey on board. For me, it doesn't matter if he did or not. He's had a low-key prep coming into this. He's a decent price.
Okay, let's just wrap up the Breeders' Cup then. And Billy and Tom, have you got a selection or view?
For this particular race,
yeah,
for the Classic, I would be with Declaration of War. I think he is what I would call my Raiders selection of over the 2 days. I hear it's the first time I've heard about his dislike for the dirt, but the way that he's been versatile over all the other types of ground, I'm going to back him to win.
Yeah,
this.
I mean the question mark is though, why didn't the horse not stay in America? Billy, for you?
Yeah, I'd love to see Gary Stevens win on Macho Man, but I'm going to go with Game On Dude as my selection.
Okay, Game On Dude. Your selection?
Palace Malice.
Palace Malice, which we better touch on because that's obviously further down the card. Tell us why.
It's going to sound really bad to Mike Smith, but he's finally been chucked off with a horse after 2 subpar performances on board the horse. I don't think you can blame him too much for the performance last time, in that he was just beaten by a freak performance. But I think he's going to enjoy the Santa Anita surface. Now, the reason being, from my own studying, 71% of the dirt races over a mile or further have been won by front runners or something that's close to the pace. Now, Palace Malice is going to be up with the pace.
And what price can we expect?
14 to 1.
14 to 1. Is that your nap of the Breeders' Cup?
That's my nap, yeah. We'll
it
take
is?
that.
It's convinced me to get on. The 14 to 1. So.
Palace Malice. Right, okay, we're going to have to wrap up now, but obviously the racing, not only just these 4 races, racing on Friday, is there anything that you'd like to mention that we've not covered this evening?
Yeah, 2 tips really for the Friday card. We were speaking earlier on, Beholder in the distaff.
Yeah.
Looks a great price. Probably around...
Trialled well as well.
Sorry?
Trialled well around the course, I've seen it.
Yeah, and she didn't even need the whip last time. Still progressing, looks great. And Bobby's kitten in a juvenile turf.
Okay. And what juvenile turf is on the Saturday, right?
On the Friday.
On the Friday, so they're your 2 selections. Guys, have you managed to pick
I'll
one from...
Throw some at you quickly. Sir Michael Stout runs Dank in the 7:43, I think, tomorrow. In the 2-year-old turf 9:25, one of my favourites, Giovanni Baldini's back on the track.
Giovanni Baldini, the 1-2 shot that wins at
he's
Dundalk.
been freshened up at 1-2 in Dundalk, and I'd like to see him run well. And the other one's a 2-year-old fillies turf, Vorda, runs over there. The Frenchies won it this year, and I think they might do it again as well.
Okay, Billy.
I've got nothing outside of these 4 races, if I'm honest. So if I was having one bet for the meeting, I'd go for Big Blue Kitten.
Okay, lovely. So Palace Malice is your nap, 14 to 1.
Yep.
And that will increase our viewers tenfold if it comes in. Thanks very much. That's our Breeders' Cup special. Hopefully, we've given you 1 or 2 winners for the weekend. Don't forget, we've got a number of these specials coming up during the course of the winter. Until next time, it's good night.